Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Thursday, February 18, 2021, and we're going to call to order the meeting of the Blueprint Intergovernmental Agency Board of Directors. And this, as you know, is a workshop on strategic plan of the Office of Economic Vitality. And I want to welcome everyone. I don't know where everybody else is, but for those of you who are here, you're welcome. And thank you for joining us here in Chambers. Those that are participating virtually and watching us online, welcome to you as well. Our regular meeting is scheduled for 3 p.m. this afternoon or shortly thereafter following this workshop. Now, what I'd like to do with the workshop is let's do what we need to do, and if we can finish maybe 15 minutes earlier so we can go out of this room and do like they do in school, take a mass break, and then come back for the start of the meeting at 3. So if we can do that, if y'all work with me, we'll get that done, because we will need to come out of this room to get some air or to do something that'll allow us to continue. Before we get started, as you all know, we do have a mask ordinance, and so our masks are required at all times, even when speaking. So we're ready to move on the agenda for this workshop. Mr. Pendergreen.
Yes, Madam Chair,
Are there any agenda modifications for the workshop?
We have not received any requests for agenda modifications. There are none, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. So the first workshop item is Tallahassee, Leon County's role in the pathways to promoting job creation over the past decade, currently and during the next 5 years. Mr. Pendergreen, you are recognized to proceed with this item.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Very excited. Just a point of reference. It's been a very productive 5 years since some of us sat around these tables and worked on launching the Office of Economic Vitality and creating a cogent, well bought in, well informed strategic plan. Now, I'm going to turn it over to our OEV director here and guest. But I want to highlight this first agenda item actually intends to pull back the microscope a little bit before we get into the specifics of the challenges that we have met and or exceeded, where we are today, how we have produced upon your strategic plan in the past 5 years, which is the second item. And the County Commission, I believe, actually brought this up at a recent retreat, and I think it's very helpful when speaking in economic development terms. This first agenda item really looks at the role that local government written large can play in job creation and in economic vitality. And it's as broad brush as you might imagine it to be. But it really helps set the table, if you will, before you dive into the specifics of what one office does to achieve economic development objectives and activities. I know that there are a number of speakers that will support. I do want to highlight Grace Swope, who is a former state agency head in 2 states, charged with the purpose of advocating and advancing job creation, Commissioner, and economic vitality. He chose 6 years ago, as we were just speaking, to launch his own company, Vision First, and headquarter it here in Tallahassee, Leon County, where it has grown and done well. Gray is a true thought leader in the field nationwide and travels routinely from the great TLH to points beyond. And so we're blessed to have his counsel also here today. But with all that preamble, Christina, could you, I don't know if you're mic'd, but I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Before we move on to our 2 workshop items today, I wanted to start with defining what economic development means for our community. This definition was born out of our strategic plan and is based on significant input from our community. It's important to note that this definition takes into consideration opportunities for economic expansion by better leveraging our assets to foster an ecosystem that initiates and nurtures homegrown, innovative, and inclusive businesses. Both of the items before you today build off of our community's definition of economic development. So during the January workshop or county retreat, the county commission requested a workshop item exploring the pathways to job creation, specifically the public policy decisions that lead to that. This item offers a broader perspective on the matters related to that, and that may also inform future economic development strategies. Then, as Ben mentioned, the second workshop item expands upon the first by reporting on the actions and accomplishments of the long-term strategic plan. The role of local government in job creation stems from the direction and decisions made by you as elected policymakers in setting the strategic direction of the county and the city. These main priority areas then influence and empower decision-making across the private sector to benefit local commerce and economic vitality. The work of both the county and city commissions focuses on creating a high quality of life, a safe and vibrant community for all citizens, and a diverse and robust economy. All of us are headed towards the same goal. Today, I'll highlight just 3 examples of major infrastructure projects and how the public sector follows closely behind these investments by creating job opportunities and further expanding our local economy. These examples directly speak to local employers' feedback who believe in the importance of quality infrastructure, cultural amenities, and maintaining the quality of life that attracts and retains talent. The first example before you is Gain Street. The total amount of public sector investment was $33 million from the city, county, state, and the CRA to improve roadways, widen sidewalks, add trees and art in the right-of-way, and make drainage appointments. This vibrant corridor has rapidly become a destination for students, young professionals, out-of-town visitors, and residents. The Gain Street project has catalyzed over $500 million in private sector investment today and resulted in a thriving new center of activity between the 2 major universities. Again, for a $33 million public infrastructure project, it is leveraged over $500 million by the private sector. This is a 15-to-1 return on investment. This specific development was also highlighted in 2018 as the best example of local redevelopment by the 880s community. Another example of private sector investment following public sector investment is Cascades Park. So for approximately $33 million of sales tax funding was allocated to transform a former brownfield into a Tallahassee premier park, now home to major concerts, cultural festivals, and community events. This public investment also attracted North American Properties, who is now building a hotel, condominiums, townhomes, apartments, retail, and food service in this space. This public sector project directly led to a 10-to-1 return on investment by the private sector. Also, the investment of pedestrian walking bridge has served to connect Cascades to the South Monroe Adams Street area. This area has also seen a similar revitalization with the opening of Happy Motoring, Lucky Goat Coffee, Vail Innovation, Proof, and the new Somo Walls project. It's anticipated that the future Blueprint project focused on placemaking and walkability in this area will continue to promote economic growth. In 2013, the question before the Leon County Commission was what to do with the county-owned warehouse that formerly housed election equipment. This warehouse was located between 2 major universities and on the edge of the Gain Street project. The answer? Open an urban business incubator. In 2014, Domi Station opened its doors or entered into a public-private relationship with Leon County. Other significant partners include FSU and Florida A&M. Today, Domi has supported over 200 business startups, served over 500 coworkers, and hosted and organized more than 800 events to date. Domi has successfully supported companies through critical stages of entrepreneurial progress with an overall economic impact of $109 million. Over the next 20 years, investment in the quality of life infrastructure will continue through the county, city, and Blueprint projects. The new Tallahassee police quarters will create a master plan and revitalize the Northwood Mall Center, and the county is pursuing a massive facelift for the historic Amtrak station to become a visitor destination center. Blueprint projects will inject $200 million into 15 projects over the next 5 years. As the above examples have shown, private sector investment tends to follow these major infrastructure projects, which could also happen along these proposed projects. These next 3 slides focus on the county and city services to support and coordinate the private sector's growth. The city and county growth departments work to optimize permitting timelines and development opportunities, and design work strives to make people-centered places that are sustainable, and since its inception has assisted over 530 private sector projects. To attract and recruit the next wave of talent, communities must ensure their K-12 systems are well-positioned to meet these challenges. The county, city, and OEB actively engage our educational ecosystem partners through Career Source Capital Region and support our local institution efforts to help pave the way for increased talent development and recruitment. Your OEB team acts as a business marketing and attraction ambassadors for our area. We highlight our unique assets and communicate these assets to active progress. And again, the second item of today's workshop highlights the work of the OEB team and how the Economic Development Strategic Plan is implemented under the policy direction of the IA Board. As been mentioned, I'm pleased to have Grace Swope here, President and CEO of Vision First Advisors. Ben already went through Gray's accolades, and I'm just really excited to have working with him and have him talk to you a little bit today about local government's role in job creation. Gray?
Thank you, Christina. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here and meet with you in this workshop. First, from a standpoint of the lens of an economic development consultant that does site selection and strategy, but secondly, and more importantly, as a business here in Tallahassee and Leon County. And so, Ben, thank you for your kind words. It's hard to believe that our business started 6 years ago next week. And we started right here. And what it really is interesting about our business in economic development consulting, we have no competition here. Our competition's in Atlanta, it's in Chicago, it's in Dallas, it's in large cities, and we're able to compete with them right here from this community. And I think that speaks well for what we do here in this community. So I appreciate the support of this group in working to make this a place to grow a business. So I'm going to have the opportunity to help in the workshop 2 times today. And this first one is to talk about the role of government in economic development. And so the first thing that's kind of my premise, and I shared this with you, is when you look at economic development and where I come from it, a good friend of mine named Ron Kitchens talked about how do you make a difference. And he's always said the greatest force for change is a job. And you think about that from a family, from an individual, from a community, that is a great force. But when I think about it, I also think about it as the next step. It's not just any job, it's a meaningful job. Does it have meaning to the individual, and does it provide wages that I can, do the things that I need to do? And so with that premise and where I come from is how does government play in that role for that greatest force for change? And so we look at what you've been doing, for 6 years in this plan and in this, or 5 years, I should say, in this plan. The things that I like that you've done is you've really looked at ways to collaborate, just in your very definition, to coordinate, to facilitate, to optimize assets. Those are roles that you can do. Public policy, decision-making, all that plays into the role in how you do those things. When it comes to private investment and where you create jobs, the OEV and how they attract and retain and then facilitate that growth all fit the role of what you guys can do and what this workshop's about. So I think that's important. But the balance is, how do you do that with private sector and you mitigate risk for private investment? And that's the challenge. People often ask me, tell me what structure's best, which organization looks best, who should we be looking at, who are the benchmarks? I told you this 5 years ago, and I still believe this with all my heart today. I can point to a structure that's all public, and it may fail. I can point to you a public structure that's all, to an organization that's all public, and it's highly successful. I can do the same thing from all private, and then for public privates. But at the end of the day, it's leadership that matters. It's how you work together on public and private sector to mitigate risk. The greatest barrier for jobs, private investment, is risk. And so how do you mitigate that as a community? And so when you look at public policy and you look at the ways that you and the decision-making you make as a group, that drives your economic development strategy, is how we as a community do the things that we want to meet the needs of our constituents. And we do so from a job creation and private investment that provides benefit for the holistic community that we live in. That's economic development. And so I say that because there's not a cookie cutter formula to do this. You have to make the decisions what's right and fits this community. And that is one of the things that I've been able to see in our business and looking at so many different organizations around this country is there's not one size shoe that fits all. And so today I hope we'll work together, ask the tough questions. We talk about what that strategy might look like, the policy. I know I'm gonna come back and talk specifically a little bit about the strategy itself and job platforms, and I will share in more detail about where market-driven, this market, where it drives job growth. I'll talk about actions that you facilitate community development and job creation. And then I'll also talk about the role that you play in and what are competitive projects. How do we compete as a community on someone that may be thinking about an investment here versus somewhere else? And how all three of those come together. So I look forward to the discussion today. And with that, I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Christina.
Thank you, Gray. With that, Madam Chair, that brings us to the end of our presentation today, and our staff's recommendation is option 1, to accept the report.
Thank you for your presentation. At this point, do we have any public comments? Any comments from the public?
Madam Chair, we do have one speaker, and that is Stanley Sims. Microphone is right there in front of Mr. Sims, and we do not have anyone who has connected virtually, so this speaker in person is the only one we have.
Okay. Mr. Sims?
I'm coming, baby. I got performance. My name is Stanley Sims. She don't work for our organization. She just helping me. I'm the executive director of Help, new business owner in the Frenchtown community. I promise Ms. Karen, my board of directors, some of the people in the community, that I would not bring up how we feel we've been robbed of $1 million of the Civil Rights Center in Frenchtown. I told them that I would not bring up how you all haggled and horse traded our money away. So I ain't gonna bring it up. I'm gonna just talk about this. I extended an invitation to you all to come to the garden. So since y'all, and I take that back, thank you, Commissioner Cummings. Thank you, Commissioner Nick Maddox, for an hour and 42-minute conversation on the phone. Thank you, Commissioner Dozier, for an hour and I think about 2 hours, really. We kept saying we got to go. I'm looking around. Thank you, Commissioner Nehemiah, for you have been on various journeys with me. When we had Tyrone downtown, several others. But Mr. Gary Shute, you and all of your presentation, nothing failed in Frenchtown. You keep telling us that we don't have a plan. We have a collaborative plan, a stimulus package, a ready-to-go project with multiple collaborative partners. And all I'm asking today is to have mercy on my good friend Ben and Vince and Christina and direct them to work with the Frenchtown Coalition, not with Stanley. Got Karen here. Can't talk to me, you can talk to Karen. Can't talk to Karen, you can talk to Maisha. But talk to us. Because people that y'all are talking to saying we don't have a plan.
You're at 2.5 minutes. You have 30 seconds.
We got a plan because we had 3 homicides, Mr. Swoop. 3 homicides. We need jobs. And we got a ready-made package. All we need is ready-made leaders to invest in us. Y'all pray for Ben, because I'm coming at you, Ben. I love you, brother. Y'all take care. Homegrown. And these are free now. Free. Some of these are for the Sunday school teachers. If you like the green. But these free for y'all. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Was that our only speaker?
That's the only speaker that I'm aware of. I'm looking around just to make sure I don't see anyone else who's entered the room. I do not, so I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Now we can go into, Ben, you're about to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to, again, just for the benefit of the conversation, I acknowledge that we've got a very robust second agenda item to really dig into some of the specifics and details. Just, again, just a brief reminder, this was on the large pathways, the good work in many different arenas that local governments can do, and so I just wanted to remind the body of that.
Okay. We'll do commission discussion as we work our way to selecting an option. Our Mayor Daley and Commissioner Richardson, I see you.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved for option 1 and seconded by Vice Chair. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is Tallahassee-Leon County Long-Term Economic Development Strategic Plan and report on the actions of the Office of Economic Vitality. Mr. Pingree, you are recognized to proceed on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll quickly turn to Director Paredes. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, before we transition to that second item today, I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you the Love Your Local video. As you know, we rebranded our Shop Local initiative this year to Love Your Local with a new logo, partner inclusion, and asked businesses to participate. This campaign saw tremendous online traction through social media. In fact, we're still handing out the Love Your Local yard signs. This newly branded campaign garnered local media support throughout November and December and was even nationally recognized as a way that communities across the country are supporting local businesses.
It has been a journey, but a pandemic is like nothing that anybody has ever been through before.
Oh my. Initially, it was rough. Gosh, we were just barely hanging on.
We had celebrated our 5-year anniversary actually just prior to the first case of coronavirus. So it's been an interesting 2020 for us. Small businesses are the city which they're in. They represent every facet of which the community we reside in. They're the people you see in the streets that you don't know.
I mean, I think small businesses are the backbone of the community.
You know, besides the loss of revenue, it was just great to see that we could actually hang in there. And to see the community rally behind all of the small businesses and the local restaurants and everything.
I'll tell you, in large part, the city and the county with the CARE Acts and the grants that we had in the spring, that they've helped immensely.
The holidays are coming up, and you know, whatever money you can put back into the local economy is going to have a huge effect on those local businesses.
But it just means a lot that the community stepped up and gotten behind all of the local restaurants here in town.
It's not just a business, you know, we're not just here to make money. We just really want people to just come and just not only get a good quality meal, but just to feel the love and we really appreciate it. We really do.
Shop local, eat local, drink local. It's going to go back to the people in your community.
This year, we had nearly 300 businesses participate in the Love Your Local campaign, and we're looking forward to integrating this into our business outreach efforts and pulling in more support from our partners in advance of the 2021 holidays. And if I was still around town, my boys will pull me aside and it's like, Mommy, they have a Love Your Local sign, we have to go inside. So it's been neat to see how that's been integrated into the community. So thank you for your support. You can find these videos on our YouTube page, and please do share. We're still encouraging people to love your local. And with that, Commissioners, we'll move on to the update of our long-term economic development strategic plan. As in the past, we start out with each presentation going over our vision for the office, our mission, the 6 key cornerstones that are before you, and today we'll walk through each one of these and their accomplishments, and then our targeted industries. And to that end, I wanted to take this opportunity to highlight a specific industry that's been extremely resilient over the course of the last year. In fact, we're seeing businesses within the IT and professional services hiring and expanding their business outreach. And one of the companies that you'll see here today hired 31 people in 2020 and is anticipating to hire more this year. And it is Ruvos Technology. They're locally based, and they're expanding their operations and working closely with Enterprise Florida to open an international office. So I'll let Ruvos and Diverse Computing talk to you a little bit about their expanding opportunities.
My name is Nicole Moore, and I am the Chief Operating Officer for Diverse Computing here in Tallahassee, Florida. Diverse Computing is a software development company, and essentially we innovate software products based around the concept that information sharing improves the safety and efficiency of police officers, and that in turn improves public safety in our community, whether that's here in Tallahassee or anywhere in the United States.
My name is Eddie Gonzalez-Lumiere, and I'm the CEO at Ruvos. Ruvos was founded in 2004 here in Tallahassee, Florida. We're focused on healthcare technology, both in the private sector and in public health. Well, we have to go back 16 years why we're here in Tallahassee. The Florida Department of Health needed an organization to connect data, to connect the different county health departments. And we were founded here in Tallahassee. Been here 16 years, extremely proud to be here in Tallahassee. We're not going anywhere. We continue to recruit and contribute to the community, which is very exciting.
The fact that Tallahassee cost of living is more affordable allows us to offer competitive prices to our customers, as well as pay competitive salary to our employees. We have employees who have been here 2 to 3 years that have already bought a house, and that's not something they'd be able to do in one of the larger tech markets with the cost of living.
A big part of Ruvos and our DNA is the community and partnerships. A lot of our employees live here. Their families live here. We also have a responsibility to give back to the community, which has been extremely supportive. So we're heavily involved with the Office of Economic Vitality, the Tallahassee Chamber, TalTech, the Florida Tech Council, DOMI, and the Early Learning Coalition. Those are just some of the organizations that we contribute. And it's not just about sponsoring an event. It's about volunteering, it's about mentoring, it's about sharing advice, it's about listening as well. And that's something we're gonna continue to do, because I think that's been a major factor of our success over the last 16 years.
I think that we will continue to grow at a reasonable rate, and we want to continue to build our impact in the public safety community. So in 5 to 10 years, we'll still be here in Tallahassee doing the same thing we do in as many places across the U.S. as we can.
And even though we've been around for 16 years, we try to also give back, because we're still very entrepreneurial. and we see a lot of potential in Tallahassee. So as someone who's looking for a great place to raise a family and to also be able to work with some amazing companies, I mean, Tallahassee has to be on that map and has to be on that list.
We use these videos to help market our community as a place to do business, to highlight the innovation in IT here in our community. And this year, we'll be working with 850 Magazine to highlight several of our innovative and diverse companies this summer, such as Data Set Ready and the ACT House. Commissioners, as originally envisioned in 2016, OEV provides a one-stop shop for economic development and is responsible for the day-to-day execution of our community's first ever long-term strategic plan, utilizing the considerable experts of our community partners, as you can see here. Over the past 5 years, OEV has served as a keystone organization by actively creating opportunities to coordinate and connect both private and public sector ecosystem. Economic development is a community sport, and with the coordination and support of all private and public ecosystem partners. Through the Economic Vitality Leadership Council and their guidance, your policy guidance, OEV has been able to support numerous partners to assist businesses and grow and retain jobs. And this impact has been significant. Over 2,500 businesses assisted, over 50 project leads, preserved thousands of jobs, created hundreds of new jobs, and generated millions in economic impact to the local economy since 2016. These accomplishments are further shown through the numerous awards and recognition that OEV has received over the last few years. And as commissioners, I'd like to take a moment to thank the OEV team for all their efforts that have led to these accomplishments and awards. Daryl Jones and our MWSBE Deputy Director and his team, Shanae Wilkes and LaTanya Raffington, Kiana Brown, our Communications Coordinator, and Marjolaine Ortiz, Drew Dietrich, our Business Development Deputy Director, and his team, Richard Fetchick, Kevin Garricky, TJ Lewis, and Dan Lucas. And of course, I'd like to thank the leadership of Ben Pingree, the County Administrator and City Manager, but none of this would be made possible without your leadership and guidance. So we thank you for that as well. And speaking of award-winning, in conjunction with a new website, we launched a new interactive data center, which provides detailed yet comprehensive information on critical economic metrics in an easy-to-use, digestible format. Our data efforts have won 3 awards to date. Since the implementation of the strategic plan, OEV and ecosystem partners completed or initiated 82% in our strategic work plan, which is constantly being added to, and as it is a living, breathing document. These next few slides highlight each cornerstones, what we have accomplished, what we're doing, and what's next. Today, I'm just gonna highlight a few of these for you and then turn it over to Gray. In business formation, we're supporting the Appalachia Regional Planning Council and the FAMU Federal Credit Union on their microloan programs. In the last 5 months, your leadership has helped put $2 million of funding in the community to support small, minority, and women-owned businesses. As we focus on what's next, we're seeking more collaborative relationships with our entrepreneurial ecosystems and working with Synapse Florida to establish strategic partnerships for entrepreneurial support through statewide collaboration. In the area of tech transfer and commercialization, we have facilitated several NDAs and MOUs with the private sector industry in collaboration with FAMU and FSU for research within magnetic science and biotech. This comes as a result of our partnership with Research on Investment. And I'll elaborate more on our working relationship with ROI during the Business Recruitment Initiative. Through this partnership with ROI and the Magnetic Task Force and collaborating with MagCorp to promote our community's unique resource assets, we've branded this area as the magnetic capital of the world, and we're focusing on recruiting global leaders in advanced manufacturing. Our business retention and expansion is probably our most active initiative. The work of our MWSBE team is focused almost squarely within this cornerstone and seeks to provide support to our over 225 certified MWSBEs that represent over 1,500 employees. In addition, we've launched the Big Bend Manufacturing Associations, building a close working relationship with Florida Makes. This is a wonderful opportunity to bring resources to support our manufacturers, and we're in the process of building a membership base right now. When it comes to business recruitment, OEV acts as the marketing and attraction ambassadors for the area. We currently have 14 active projects in various stages of the pipeline. These projects represent over 400 jobs and $66 million in capital investment. And they're in, like I mentioned, they're in various stages of the project pipeline. A great example of our working relationship with Research on Investment is Project Loop. This project is born out of our contract with ROI. It started as a research opportunity with the Mag Lab, and now they are considering adding a manufacturing location to the U.S., and Tallahassee is on that list. ROI's target focus within our industries of applied science, think magnetic technologies, and manufacturing. They've helped raise Tallahassee's profile within this sector and bring knowledge and expertise to the table to filter and identify emerging and new opportunities. Those leads are then turned over to OEV to move through this project pipeline. This pipeline can move one of two ways. It either moves very rapidly or very slowly. And I know Gray will talk a little bit more about our role in this competitive project pipeline. But basically, we develop a lead within our targeted industry studies, work very closely with that company, supplying all of their information requests. And as they announce their intent to look more closely at our community, we work to develop a resource kit, which can also include incentives. It's important to note that any incentives that are eventually awarded to the company are based on performance, and that's typically around jobs created and capital investments. They are based on performance. And just one example I'd like to highlight here is our recent Danfoss announcement that really provided some magnetic momentum for us, and we were able to use that announcement to talk with Project Loop on why Tallahassee is a good opportunity for expansion. That project, the Danfoss project, took 18 months to move through the pipeline, and that was a relatively quick move for them. Now, you've heard me talk over the course of the year about how we're focusing on virtual platforms in a way to get Tallahassee, Leon County out there in a more unique position. Well, we're going virtual. And we worked with Innovation Park and their board to highlight the assets of the park and the opportunities being located here. We had the opportunity to recently share this with the LCRDA board. And I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to see it really kind of highlights those unique assets and position of our community.
Known as North Florida's hub for world-class research in emerging technologies, Innovation Park is a dynamic and collaborative community. The research park sits just 25 miles from the Gulf Coast with port access points at Port Panama City, known as the Gulf Coast Gateway, and the Port of Jacksonville, the United States' newest port. With over 30 organizations ranging from preeminent university research facilities to specialty manufacturing companies, as well as state and federal government research facilities, Innovation Park is a global hotspot for cutting-edge science. Located on 208 acres of scenic woods and rolling hills in Northwest Florida, Innovation Park is optimally positioned within close proximity to the Tallahassee International Airport, the Florida Gulf and Atlantic Railroad, and major roadways including Interstate 10 and the local beltway, Capitol Circle. The local university campuses of Florida A&M University, Florida State University, and Tallahassee Community College, as well as the Florida State Capitol Complex, located in downtown Tallahassee, are less than 10 minutes away from the park. The Leon County Research and Development Authority oversees Innovation Park, which is comprised of properties owned by either the Leon County Research and Development Authority, Florida A&M University, Florida State University, or private entities. Innovation Park includes 17 buildings that house over 30 organizations and is home to several industry leaders and more than 13 centers of excellence. Innovation Park is home to the largest and highest powered magnet laboratory in the world, the National High Magnetic Field Laboratory, known as the Mag Lab. A staple of the park since 1993, the National Mag Lab houses many one-of-a-kind instruments and record holders, including the 45 Tesla magnet, in addition to many other tools that make cutting-edge science possible. As the world's leader in manufacturing oil-free centrifugal compressors, Danfoss is a prime example of a business that flourishes due to its close proximity to the FAMU FSU College of Engineering, National Mag Lab, and other nearby research institutions, and Tallahassee's community. It also serves to distinguish Tallahassee and Leon County as a competitive global research and development location. The future site of the North Florida Innovation Labs will include a new 40,000 square foot facility located on 3.5 acres in Innovation Park. The incubator will focus on helping hard science, high-impact companies pioneer new technologies and continue to put the Tallahassee region at the forefront of innovation. As a major research hub located in Tallahassee, Leon County, Innovation Park fosters private innovative companies' creativity and growth. For more information on Innovation Park and other opportunities in our community, contact the Office of Economic Vitality today.
With the Innovation Park video that we just showed for site selection, we're utilizing that, again, to really put an emphasis of the assets that are available around some of our key resources through the Mag Lab, HPMI, and CAP. So that's something you see throughout our marketing efforts. And when you look at the talent pipeline, I guess it's really important to note that all of the other cornerstones we just discussed could not be made possible without emphasis placed on growing a talent pipeline. Earlier today, I mentioned how the county and the city and OEV work closely with our educational partners. And so that's really important when you talk about fostering a workforce for these companies and these pipelines that we talk to. And it's something that we do day in and day out. I also wanted to announce that just yesterday, our office found out that we'll be working with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and their School of Management to determine how we can increase our effectiveness in building capacity for our minority and women-owned businesses and creating more jobs. So we're looking forward to doing that effort. It'll run along the side of our disparity study update, which was approved by you at our last meeting. So we're really looking forward to that. When you look at the creative economy, our team is focused on building collaboration efforts with FSU and FAMU, on innovation and new creative industries and avenues for business development and growth. And we also work very closely with KCCI and Choose Tallahassee on enhancing the quality of life of our community. And before I turn it over to Gray, I hope the big takeaway here for our strategic plan was just how much is done in collaboration with our partners, all under your guidance. And then with that, I'd like to turn it over to Gray to talk a little bit more.
Thank you, Christina. So I'm going to back up a little bit and share a little bit about our expertise and why we're here. As I said before, this has been a great location for us to grow our business. And we focus on working with clients and helping them define pathways to success, whether they're a community, whether they're a corporation or a small business. We look at strategy that helps them to continue to foster an ecosystem of economic development, whether they're on the private side or the public side. So I'm proud of what we've been able to do from this location and grow our business and the expertise that we have. So as Ben mentioned, I've had the great fortune to lead 2 states in economic development. But we've also, of our team, we have worked on local economic development, have led local economic development, regional. We've been involved in utility economic development. So we see it from a lot of different lenses. And we launched our business wanting to use this expertise to work with both the private and the public side, as I said, to find pathways to success. Just like OEV, we've come a long way in 5 years. And I'm proud of our success. We've grown from an office of 1 at the Regis on Monroe Street to 8, the 4 of which are based here in Tallahassee. We've done work now for 5 Fortune 500 companies, of which 3 we still are doing work for. We've done work now in 35 states. I can tell you in 2019, I was probably one of the biggest users of our airport here, as Ben knows. Not so much last year, but we were able to do that from here. And I think that's important because this perspective and what we bring to the discussion today in strategic planning not only comes from our own learning and past experience, but it comes from what we see and what people are doing and how they're reacting and what you're up against from a competitive standpoint, as well as how can you figure out a pathway to help all areas of this community to be inclusive in what you do from a holistic economic development strategy. And so I'll start with kind of talk about where, as I said, this platform for jobs. And we like to think of it in 3 different platforms and how an ecosystem works for job creation and capital investment being plugged into a community. And so if you think of it from what the OEV and the projects that Christina just referred to that we work, we call those competitive projects. Those are real projects that communities see that call organizations like OEV and say, whether they're a site selector like us or whether they're company direct saying, hey, we're thinking about your community. We're wanting to understand a little bit more about, is this a place for our business? And it's competitive. They just don't walk in the door and say, hey, we're moving here. Let me just throw down, find me a building and this is where we want to be. There's a lot of analytics that go into it today. A lot of people do it on their own. First impressions are made by data on the internet. For our business, by the time we call a community or a state and say we have a client that's considering, that's about the 4th or 5th impression that we've already have. We've already analyzed the location from workforce. We've already analyzed it from a business climate standpoint. We've already looked at locations and what's that you have, what assets are there that can support the business. Those are competitive projects. And you have to find pathways to help them to be successful. The example that Christina just shared with Danfoss is how you used an asset on a competitive project. They could do that anywhere in the world. But you have the Mag Lab here, and you've made it easy to use innovation and technology to support a business. And because of that, I don't know the exact wage they're doing, but if I did my math correctly, it's 20% above, which I think it's maybe greater than this, the county average. That's $14.5 million in new payroll into this community annually. $14.5 million new dollars from payroll for a competitive expansion that will drive new business opportunities. Whether they're retail, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's somebody selling a car or renting an apartment, that's disposable income that's added to the community. And so that's why you play in competitive strategies. The second area to think about from a strategic plan point in this ecosystem is what we call facilitated strategies. Gain Street is a great example of facilitated strategy. I could tell you when I moved here 10 years ago, the Residence Inn on Gain Street was my home for 2 months. I didn't have a place I could go walk down the street and get a pizza or enjoy anything that was there because there was nothing there, as you know. But to look at it today, and by choice and deliberate choices that this group has made, you have a vibrant, facilitated economic strategy on Gain Street that provides opportunity. And so the same in facilitators with just in the innovation park. Facilitating growth in these areas and using these assets, that's a deliberate facilitated strategy. And then there's market opportunity. And when you look at market opportunity, Tallahassee, MSA, Leon County, this area, it's a market that people consider because of its size and what's disposable income is here. And for whatever reason, it's a market. And so we, in building our ecosystem, how do we look at this from a strategic standpoint? What makes this market better than Jacksonville or Pensacola or Greenville, South Carolina. Because today we can make choices in a lot of places where we want to put a business if the market is all the same. And so it becomes really is what is that pathway to do business in that community? What does it look like? Sometimes when I say that, people want to interpret that as to say it's the ease of doing business, which means you don't need any regulation. I'm not saying that at all. It is a pathway to doing business. How do you make this pathway here easier for business formation versus the other markets? How do you make it easier? And I often think about that when you look at products, when you're buying a new software for your computer. Often you can look at different products and you say there are a lot of there are ways that I can load this app and put this on my computer or this software. But it's the ease of it that makes you drive that decision. There's complicated processes that may go on behind the scenes, but it's the ease of being able to click through a drop-down menu or being prompted to do what you need to do next. It's that pathway that makes you successful to load that software. And it's that same pathway that makes you successful in business formation. If these are the things that we need in our community from a business and understanding that, what is my timeline? What do I need to provide? How do I get there? And that's how a business is formed. And so those are important as part of that ecosystem of economic development. So when you look at that and you start talking about strategic planning, you look across the board and you say, where's the role of government? We didn't talk a lot about it in that first section, in that first option. But when you talk about market and facilitator, the role of government is heavy there. When you talk about competitive projects, the ecosystem supports it, but it's really the role of selling and positioning your community that falls the greater on OEV and the resources they have and the tools they have that make you successful there. So it's working together and understanding in that process of where we work together and whose role. On the competitive projects, often Christina and Ben and team, they get to see an RFP. They may get to talk to a consultant. They may never hear from them again. So it's the ability to have the tools and being able to respond in that process to be successful. And so their responsibility is great there, whereas you move further to the left, it's more in how you build your ecosystem. So I wanted to share that with you as we start this dialogue and how we view opportunities in a market from private capital investment and job creation. So when we start talking about economic development strategy, I think it's important to note that any of us in this room could write a strategy. We could sit down right now and write it. But if its likelihood of being successful is greatly diminished if we don't put it into context. If we don't get the voices of you in elected roles and your constituents in that process, then the likelihood of it being successful are very low. And so it's important as we talk about, here's our objectives, here are the things that we want to do, that we also have the voice of this community in the process. And so we call it, developing the situation analysis. And it's important to make sure that you listen and you get the voices and you bring those to the table that's part of this process. And then you combine that with data and analytics. You put data and analytics in the context of what you're trying to achieve. And then you can start developing a framework for a strategy. Like I said, there's so many places that we go and we see, they just write me a plan. Well, I can tell you I can do that. But if you don't do this first part correctly, then that plan's really not going to have much a chance of being successful. And so today, as I look around the room, the question then becomes, why do we want to do this today? Well, 5 years ago, I think it's about 7, maybe, I know there's 7 different new faces in the role, maybe some are in different roles, Mayor, from where we were 5 years ago when we started this plan. So there alone are new voices They have to be part of the equation. Also think about from a strategic plan and where you're going after 5 years and why now. Boy, have things changed since last year. So 2019, as our business was growing and we moved into 2020, I thought, this is a great year. We have a great year ahead. Here's what we're going to do. Have our business plan. We know what we're going to do. And then lo and behold, to start 2020, on January the 17th, there were 3 partners in our firm. One of them fell dead from an aortic aneurysm. We didn't plan on that. And so we're faced with a third of our business, basically, from a business development standpoint, no longer there, our strategic thought process. And then weeks later, we look up, and this country hit the giant pause button on the economy. And I can tell you, in March and April last year, I was thinking, wow, what do we do? Well, we went back to the fundamentals of our own business plan, our own strategy, and we looked at the market conditions. We looked at what had transpired, what had changed. And we went back to being that customer-focused organization that we had talked about before we launched our company and asked, what do our clients need? For them to be successful and to find pathways to success, what do they need? What are their pain points? What are they trying to do? And do we have the right team in place to put that together? And I share that because the velocity of change that happened in a matter of about 6 weeks, from not just a business standpoint, from a personal standpoint, was some of the greatest things that we've ever faced. Great challenge. But the velocity of change, what happened in this country and the economy going from record employment to record unemployment in a matter of weeks, changed the dynamic. And so today, as we're coming out of this pandemic and we're looking for the future, we have to think about that velocity of change and how it's impacted decision making. Our framework for a strategy may still be similar, but the ways and the goals and the implementation of it are going to look very different as we move forward. We're going to see changes in how businesses mitigate risk in decision making. As I've shared with some of you before, the biggest obstacle to private sector investment is risk, and it's risk in many forms. Is it risk of failure? Is it risk of being able to go into a market against this competition? Is it the risk of my location? Is the reputation of a community, is that going to be a risk as well? Does it help my brand, hurt my brand? And as we move forward, the risk of how communities are going to move forward from a pandemic is also part of that equation. And is part of that strategy we have to think about. The other changes that we will see that are going to impact this region, just in the very way this country produces its products from medical, anything that we get that's been made offshore, especially when it has an Asian supply chain, is going to change. The velocity of change happens so quick we can't change those supply chains overnight, but they are changing and companies are thinking about investing. And so as we've done work in 35 different states and represented, we see this. We see companies with capital investment on the same project that was 3 years ago today have more than doubled, but the job numbers have decreased because of innovation and technology, and how communities play in that are going to be important. So in the end, as we talk about this, I think one of the things I will say, this strategy that you've had, it's hard to believe this office didn't exist. This was your first plan. And I sat there and I watched Christine and I wrote it down. 125 of the 153 tactical measures have been done. That's incredible. There's so many places that we go to that you just don't share that. They're probably implementing it, but they're not at that level. But when she put that up there, it speaks to me personally, because our measure of success as a consulting firm is, did they implement the plan? If they didn't, then we failed. And the second piece that we measure is, do we still engage with those clients? And I can tell you, it's exciting to be here in this community. As I said, our competition's not here. It's in the big cities. But we still engage with your team. We see them on the road, we see them at places, and we come back and we talk about how do we do things here locally. So I hope that we had the chance to continue to partner on this strategy, because I think that we can do some good things to continue not only to help this community, but help my home community as well.
Thank you, Gray. And I just wanted to take this opportunity now to invite the chairman of the Economic Vitality Leadership Council and of your MWSBE Leadership Council to provide some comments. Both of these represent a diverse group of stakeholders from the local business community, and they've been instrumental in providing clarity and context and experience from both the private and public sector. So we're very thankful for the support of both of these citizen communities, and I'd like to now ask Steve Evans and then Keith Bowers as the chair to speak. I believe they're both online.
Very good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. And Christina, thank you. Gray, outstanding. I'm sorry I couldn't be there today. I'm out at one of our very exciting and new companies that started up here about 4 years ago from zero, and they've ramped up to a major national impact with a technology and innovative spirit and leadership that is really represents the what OEV is about and what leadership is about. And I'm honored to be here, so I'm sharing this from this point at this where I am. First of all, I want to thank OEV. I'm not going to repeat all the accomplishments that Christina's gone through, and I know all of you have read through the briefing material that's in front of you, but they are many. On behalf, as a member of the EVLC and as its chairman, I would share with you that we could not be more proud of not just OEV, but of the partners in this community who have really coalesced around the game plan and the strategy over the last 4 years. And it's becoming closer and more tightly integrated than ever before. And I focus on our partners because OEV would be the first to tell you, as you would too, that we can't do it alone. It's with outstanding partners like the chambers, the universities, CareerSource, DOMI, I could go on, that make this happen. But every great game has to have a center point, and OEV has emerged as that center point. More importantly, the results that are coming in across the board from an economic impact are measurable. I think one of the first things when we started OEV 4 years ago, was that everything had to be measurable. It was observable is one thing, but measurable was critical, and that has been achieved. The last 2 years have been incredibly exciting when we look at the number of startups that have gone on in this community, when we look at the kind of the companies that have gone through growth that are existing here, how OEV has facilitated and stabilized that during one of the most critical crises, health and economic crises, this country and this community has ever faced. So from a highlight standpoint, you've heard them all. There are many, many more from the tremendous work on the 3 COVID relief grants that came through last year and some of the passionate stories that came from that. The Danfoss Turbocore and the exciting expansion announcement that the team is, that Ricardo and his entire team, along with OEV and the university, really rallied around, and the economic impact in our community from that standpoint, in terms of both capital investment and jobs. The Innovation Park, the North Florida Innovation Lab, and the impact that's going to have in terms of unleashing the incredible talent in the research side of the house in our universities in a way that's going to yield jobs and capital investment. And to a very, very aggressive and well-run MWSBE program that's growing every month of the year and having an impact. I could go on, but you've heard it, you've read it. But all of these efforts, I would just remind us, share one common theme, and that is measurable economic impact on this community. However, everything's changing very, very fast. And the rate of acceleration that this country is going through, this world is going through, is growing faster than many industries' abilities to adapt to it, let alone people. As a result of that, recently the EVLC met and voted unanimously, I might mention, that the IA recommends that the IA board approve and direct OEV to amend the current contract with Vision First Advisors to update the economic development strategic plan going forward. Very, very critical. The timing on this is absolutely critical for our community, And Vision First truly has the knowledge, the experience, and the expertise. So, Christina, let me end by saying that with commissioners, with your concurrence, OEV will take the lead with our partners to make certain that we're building a resilient, sustainable, and innovative economy going forward. To each of you, thank you very much. Christina, let me turn it back to you.
Thank you, Steve. I'd like to now invite Keith Bowers. He is the chairman of the MWSB CAC, and he also serves on the EVLC Council as that representative. Keith? Thank you for being here today and providing comments. Well, I do know that Keith is on the line, and if he's able to pop back on, but the MWSBE CAC also recommended to the IA board to move forward with that, and they thank you for your leadership over the past year, and they're starting to get to work to implement the update to the 2019 disparity study and plan out activities for more MWSB engagement through their academies this year. So with that, commissioners, this brings me through to the timeline to show you next steps. As Gray mentioned, hearing from you and our community is vital to the update of the strategic plan. You can see here below is a brief timeline on how we can see both of the two studies lining up toward adoption this fall. And with that, commissioners, I'd like to present you with the options. Staff is recommending options 1 and options 2. And again, thank you so much for your leadership over the last couple of years as OEV has built the foundation and really tried to step in and service that key cornerstone for business engagement. Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation today.
Thank you very much. At this time, do we have any public speakers?
We have one speaker, Stanley Sims. If you give your name and address. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair. I'm at, what's our address? 603 Martin Luther King Boulevard. I don't know if y'all can see this. I bought this with my new Leon Cares money. Can y'all see this picture? This is Mama Joyce. Mr. Gary, she's on Atlanta Housewives. I recently went to Atlanta in the slum, the hood. There's a restaurant from Candy made by a husband called Old Lady Gang. It's in the hood. When we were there, we drove through 2 shootings. Miss Jackson, my wife, wouldn't even get out the car. And I said, that's Mama Joy. She said, I don't care who it is, I'm not getting out of my car. What is my point? People would drive to the hood for some bougie greens. Bougie greens and cornbread. But what all it does is it stirs traffic to the homemade cornbreads at Dee's Kitchen. Portia, husband runs a hot dog stand. These people come to these restaurants that draws traffic from our universities that you just pointed to. Well, what does that got to do with Frenchtown? I'm glad you asked me. It draws traffic to a high crime area. Since you all don't seem attached to it, because I don't see the vigor for applying jobs in these economic depressed like I do for FSU convention centers and like I do for performing arts. We got people over here dying, refusing to take the shot. Jobs. And we got this lady. Every day, no matter what, whether you send her some funding or not, she goes to this economic depressed area, not because you're gonna give her some money, but because she cares.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
She gets there every day, walks through the situations, you know what I'm talking about, and that you have to deal with in these areas, cleans it back up, hoping that one day you would find that what she does, God, I'm so sorry. She has a 30-minute little video, and I promised her, and I think I'm turning my laptop the wrong way. It's new.
You're at 3 minutes.
Oh, shoot. But please, Mr. Chairman.
And we're here in the iGrow Garden. We're harvesting this morning, which is located in the Frenchtown area. We're here to grow healthy vegetables so that our community can eat healthy and grow healthy.
That's a small minority, unhelped business person in the Frenchtown community.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Are there any other speakers?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cook. Commissioners, you've heard the.
I'm sorry, may I make a comment and I'll tell the card? I'm sorry, I wasn't.
Yes, Karen, if you would, just complete a speaker's card when you're done.
Yes, ma'am, I will. I'm Karen Woodall, and I am the director of the center at 603 North Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, which Mr. Sims mentioned as his address because he has some office space in there now. And I came today to listen because I'm just getting involved in economic development issues and all for the city. Normally, y'all know I kind of do the state legislative stuff, but I'm responsible for this 12,000 square foot building now right smack and dab in Frenchtown. And we want to be not just a building there, but a part of the community to give office space to folks working in the community, but also to be a part of the solution of supporting and bring this rich and vibrant community. And Mr. Sims is passionate about his community there, and I appreciate that. What we're looking to do that might be relevant to your work here is to work through, bring another part to the blueprint in that community. My observation is there's a critical need for the development of soft skills that help to lead up to building people up in their own self-worth, in their own homes, with food insecurity that then can be trained for the entrepreneurship and the issues that Mr. Sims is working on. And we have a great collaborative because we're co-located in this building and we all support each other and go out into the community. So I would just encourage you to keep that in mind along with all these other wonderful options that are important, and the support for them in the community is important. But if we're gonna lift up areas in our communities that need a lot of help, we have to enable the coordination, the collaboration, and the soft skills that we're kind of excited about doing. The garden that Mr. Sims is mentioning, the greens that came from that, the community garden on Dent Street is just a piece of an exciting part of how to reach into the community of Frenchtown and engage people with support. So that's all I just, and thank you for allowing me to just kind of jump up.
Thank you, Karen. Tell them the name of your, of the building.
It's the Florida People's Advocacy Center. We're the proud host of the beautiful RBG and Rosa Parks murals these days. And that's also drawing people into the community because they come by and stop and take pictures, and we want to be able to connect the dots once folks are there with other things.
Okay, thank you. Be sure to complete a speaker's card so we have it for the record. Thank you so much for adding to our comments. Okay, Mr. Pengreen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, I know you've heard quite a bit, and it's been a great story to tell. It's been a great number of years under your leadership to act on all these initiatives. I just want to re-emphasize as you begin your discussion now, On the screen before you are the three options. Welcome them all, recommend options 1 and 2. Christina touched upon it, but I want to just reemphasize for just a moment. What's being recommended is a comprehensive update to your strategic plan. That would be upon your direction and approval. That would be engaged in during the course of at least a half year ahead. Numerous touch points before this board, including one-on-one conversations with a consultant, numerous touch points throughout the community, all different areas and aspects of our strong and robust economy. And so I just wanted to clarify that point. Of course, this is a great opportunity if there's something you want us to focus upon in addition to give that guidance, but we're here to respond to any questions that you might have. I would like to also just very briefly note that when it comes to the budget of OEV, you can't talk about a program without ultimately talking about a budget. But as is conveyed in your workshop materials, your May budget workshop will really be a great opportunity to talk about OEV's budget. So that would be the time, optimally. And with that, we're here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Let me also note that Commissioner Jimbo Jackson is online. Commissioner Jackson? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure you could hear us and we could hear you in case you want to weigh in. Okay.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Point of clarification. At least the county commission meetings, we could take a vote to allow Commissioner Jackson to participate and vote virtually. Do we have the same ability to do so here? And if so, I would love to make a motion to allow him to participate in votes.
I'll second that.
Is that a?
That's correct. That's the same rule that we have under the Blueprint telephonic participation policy. And it's a majority vote.
Thank you very much.
The motion has been made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Welcome again, Commissioner Jackson. Did you want to start off with any comments, or you just want to listen?
I'd like to listen first, and then I'll be happy to chime in at some point later on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mayor
Thank
Daley.
you.
Madam Chair, for the conversation, I'll go ahead and move option number 1 and option number 2.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and second for option number 1 and number 2 by the mayor and Commissioner Richardson. Any discussion? Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. First, I'd like to ask a question to Mr. Swoop. Mr. Swoop, good to have you here, sir. A big part of what we've been talking about at OEV over the last few years has been the idea of using the Mag Lab and the Magnetic Capital of the World campaign as a strategy. It's hard for us as a mid-sized city, as good as Tallahassee and Leon County are, to compete with the likes of Atlanta, Austin, Miami even emerging as a tech hub. But what we can do is use our competitive advantage with magnetic technology. Danforth has a great example to be able to promote that really from a narrow band of potential business recruitment. I know this agenda item is really to vote on updating the strategic plan, which would basically comprise in part your answer. But so I don't want to hold you to too much, but what is your thought right now at this moment on the idea of that strategy and where we stand and where we might want to be interested in doubling down perhaps on that type of approach?
So, Commissioner, I think that first of all, if you look at asset optimization as an economic development strategy, and you look at what we have here, that is absolutely a competitive advantage that most people can't replicate. And so I'm a big believer in always selling to your strengths. Yeah, there's some things that we may not can compete with when it comes to Atlanta overall, but when it comes to access and the ability to kind of, I don't want to say probably integrate would be a good word with the intellect that we have here, the intellectual capital that we have here, the access to it, and the ability to set up what we've done already with the Mag Lab, I think that is a strategy that you want to continue on. And again, you want to kind of look and see where you are in the market today. But from the surface, it makes sense to me to continue, and not just there, but other innovation that we have that are coming from our universities. And, you know, we've had clients that have been in the state that weren't necessarily looking at this market, but we've brought them here to the,
Did we put a couple of chairs?
Florida A&M University, Florida State University Engineering School to meet with the faculty, knowing that they could support somewhere else in the state too. So that's an advantage you have here as well. So I think it's multiple, and how do you connect that?
Thank you, Mr. Swoop. You know, I think we're on the right path with regard to the Magnetic Capital of the World campaign, and I think OEV and Blueprint are doing the right thing. We found the right path, and they're walking down that path. When you talk with folks that are knowledgeable of the magnetics industry, there's a tremendous amount of excitement. If you look at MRIs, every single MRI uses magnetic technology, but there's a new generation of MRIs being developed right now that uses rare earth magnets as the next generation. So, I mean, that's a new emerging wave of MRIs. But you think about it, I mean, we've all heard this before. Our smartphones, electrical cars, wind turbines, all of those use magnetic technology. We are on the, and those are the current or future technologies in the near future, right? We are on the cusp, people will tell you in the industry that know, we are on the cusp of a major transformation in how magnetic technology can be used. At the same time, we have the world's largest magnet and some of the best minds in that field right here in Tallahassee. People come from around the world to visit Tallahassee. They stay in our hotels, they eat in our restaurants, simply to do the research that they can do only in Tallahassee. Conversations I've been having over the last several weeks, again, confirm that we're on the right path. The steps we've taken to date are the right ones. But I'm also being told that we really need to double down. The moment is ripe for Tallahassee and Leon County and the Mag Lab to really move forward fast, to take advantage of this competitive advantage that we have and make the most of it. I've been told, there's probably maybe a 2-year window that is just the perfect time for us to really take a look at what's out there, reach out to those industries that are looking at magnetic technologies and try to entice them to come here. After a couple of years, that window of opportunity might start to close. And what I've been saying this before, and Ben, you and I talked about this yesterday, this is not a surprise, but we've got good staff here. They're doing the right thing. But in order to really make the best use of our dollars, our economic development investment dollars, I believe we need to hire people in whatever form is best. We need to hire people that work alongside those businesses, those tech companies in Austin and Atlanta and Silicon Valley, the people that have a Rolodex that's this thick of people that are on the cusp of this new technology that can call these people up in their smartphone to the magnet and encourage them to come here. Those people don't come cheap. They don't, because they're in high demand, because other cities, other communities see the value in hiring those people that know this stuff. But I really do. I want us to really emphasize this. We've talked about this before, and again, OEV is on the right path, but I think we need to help OEV by really doubling down on this approach. We have a tremendous opportunity that no one on planet Earth has. Let's use that, because now is the time, from what I'm hearing from industry experts, to really take a hard look and ask ourselves, and ask Mr. Swoop and his firm, if this motion passes, to really take a hard look at that, because there are very few cities in this country that have the opportunity that we have with such a narrow, specialized set of businesses and industries that are on the cusp of something great. So I really want to emphasize that to the rest of my colleagues here. I hope that we can include that as part of this, because as much as OEV is doing, you have the Austins, you have the Atlantas, you have the Silicon Valleys that are hiring those people, and those experts that have that Rolodex are calling people to go to those other cities, and they're not calling them to come to Tallahassee. I want to be in that mix so that we can have an industry cluster of the high tech and magnetics, emerging technologies are going to transform this city. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Anyone else has any comment?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Matlow?
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation and the work today. A couple points on the strategic plan. I just want to make sure, it was mentioned earlier, a focus on when we're trying to attract businesses and companies to Tallahassee, we look to try to mitigate risk. And I think that's a very valid point when we're looking at bringing large corporations or people we're trying to attract who are well-established to our area. But I think when we talk about economic development as a whole, we also have to carve out people who are already here who may not have access to some of the capital and things larger corporations have. And I think they're in a totally different bucket. They're not trying to mitigate risk. You know, they're all in, they're pounding their guitars. They're, you know, the real entrepreneurial spirit of trying to get established. And how do we account for them in our strategic plan? We talk a lot about economic inequality in our community. We talk about systemic racism in our systems, and I think we may need to be deliberate on this item. I think we're doing a lot of great work with the minority and women small business enterprises, but when we really dig into it, the problem we're seeing is people don't have access to capital. And if we put money out that can be borrowed, that people can have access to, and we require the same rules that a private lender requires, I'm not sure we're really solving a problem. I think we're creating more money for people who already have access to it. So when we're looking at the people who don't have access to capital and how do we bridge that divide, I think we have to be very deliberate and pointed in that effort. And then going back to mitigate our risk, that would require us taking up more risk on people who don't have the traditional credit scores or the traditional financial backing that we think would be a safe bet to lend on. So how do we mitigate that risk? And I think that we have a great opportunity with the Office of Economic Vitality because we do have staff. We can do training. We can do mentorship. We can really give the back-end support that some of these startups need to really get carried across the finish line. So that's my first point. Second point, we have a finite amount of resources, and I think every time we examine a project, we get the numbers back from OEV of the job creation and the economic impact, but we never look at it in terms of opportunity cost. If we give $30 million to one project, how many more jobs can we create with $30 million if we do something else? And as we consider projects and as we spend money through OEV, we're asking that question and we're gauging it on other projects. Which dollars have we spent that have delivered the most return as far as jobs and actual economic impact versus which projects do not? Which projects do we know are going down a road where likely we'll take a loss? And then lastly, we haven't yet really established an equal access process to come before this board and promote a project or an idea. So I think we've seen projects come before us that are presented requests for money, but there's no front door. There's not really an application process. So I just want to make sure we're fleshing that out. So in the future, if we have public speakers are saying, why is this up for a vote to get money? Where do I come in? We have an answer that makes sense and is fair for everybody. And that's all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Matlow. Christina, on Commissioner Matlow's first point about making capital accessible for non-traditional borrowers, you want to speak on that? Because I think we're putting something is in place that was a part of your report.
Yes, Madam Chair. Just recently, Leon County was able to utilize $1 million of CARES Act funds to create a partnership with the FAMU Federal Credit Union. And that is specifically designed to assist minority and small and women-owned businesses who traditionally do not have access to capital. And that includes low credit scores. They'll bring you in, provide you counseling and financial mentorship and help you. And then if you need help with your business plan, they'll refer you to the FAMU Small Business Center for that. And just recently, they awarded their first loan to a local baker. I think as you hear from the president of the credit union, she said that Baker was very scared to take that first step, but due to the mentorship and guidance and ability to have the funding there for that micro lending opportunity, she took the leap to do that. Also, under the utilizing $200,000 of OEV funds, we were able to leverage $800,000 from the EDA to create a revolving loan fund with the Appalachia Regional Planning Council. It's structured very much the same, and I know that they just recently approved their first award to Impact Foods, another minority woman-owned company. So we are working very closely with them. I think we have been on the radio and webinars over the last 2 weeks to really promote that funding as availability. We're learning some of the biggest barriers are just taking that first step. So working with our partners to encourage our small businesses, if they're in the need for capital, to take that first step.
And the chair of the Appalachia Regional Planning Council is none other than our own Commissioner Christian Dozier from the county, and Commissioner Porter is the city's representative on the Appalachia Regional Planning Council as well. Did you all want to add something to that?
Go ahead. Madam Chair, I can't see if Commissioner Porter had her hand up.
Oh,
but
okay, go ahead, Commissioner
Well, I
Porter.
did have my hand up, but that's for comments. So if you want to go ahead and talk about ARPC.
I will just add on the Regional Planning Council very quick, and then I'll turn it over to Commissioner Porter, that, and I was going to give you this update anyhow, we are very happy not only to have the city representative with us, Commissioner Porter, but at our last executive committee meeting, we updated our bylaws to ensure that the City of Tallahassee rep is on our executive committee that sits as the revolving loan fund committee. So both Leon and Tallahassee are represented, and particularly for the Revive loan, who has already awarded their first grant as well to a woman minority-owned business. So both programs are off and running, but I did want to let you know that that change is made, and so we will have good representation and can report back as that program develops. Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Porter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank staff for this presentation. I have a few comments. I want to echo, what Commissioner Minor said about the unique opportunity that we have. I think we would be fools to not really make the most of our strengths in this community, and I'm glad to see that we are investing in that already and will continue to emphasize that. I think that, when we're talking about economic development, as we know, it's holistic. There's a lot of things that are involved, and a lot of it is an ideological leaning or temperament about the role of the public sector. I think that we have seen profound demographic, market, and cultural changes in the United States and globally, where consumer demand has been broadened. The rules of economic prosperity have changed. I think that cities are in a better position than ever in our current economy to compete for business and talent, and to meet needs of its residents. I agree that I would like to see more of an emphasis in local business, in what we're doing for our residents who are already here. When I think of economic development, I kind of think of and I've shared this before, one of my uncles who lives in Manhattan, has 5 kids, hates it. He's an executive, and he would love to move to a place like Tallahassee, and the things he cares about are good schools, good parks, safety, public transit, all of those things, the weather, and some of those things we can change, some of those things we can't. I think that there is a growing demand, not only in younger generations like my own, but across the board for density, diversity, the culture and arts, transit, bikeable, walkable neighborhoods. And I would like to see more of an emphasis, or at least what consideration we've made to that, because I think that, I have seen recommendations and information from staff, and then I see us take action that is totally opposed to a philosophy that we accept and trends we accept are beneficial for economic development. I think that also historically, public policy has concentrated market power that works against our local businesses, and that's an issue that has been brought up, and a lack of access to that kind of capital for local businesses, for small projects and not huge development projects. I think we've also seen an issue with misguided and outdated zoning policies, high real estate costs that make it prohibitive for local businesses to find a place where they can be a business. Again, mentioned financing terms that incentivize landlords to rent to chain businesses rather than to local businesses. Banking consolidation and the decline of local financial institutions. And I'm glad to see where we have stepped in, and I think we need to continue to do that. Because this is sort of the general context that I feel like perhaps was missing from some of today's update on what's going on, but are major trends that are impacting us locally and nationally. And that's not to mention, and I know we know this, but I'm worried that we're not thinking holistically enough about this. Affordable housing, public safety, the crisis of public trust, the racial and income disparities, these all play a part in our economic vitality. You know, some things that I would like to see us consider, whether it's through OEV, and I know also that the city and county separately, OEV is not the only place where we're thinking about economic vitality. It's in, you know, it's everywhere as it should be. Whether those are things that we want to consider in our strategic plan updates or perhaps already are there and I need to get an update from you about that. You know, making it easier to rehabilitate vacant buildings like we did with DOMI. There are cities that set aside space for local businesses in new development. Getting our zoning right so that we are not too prohibitive of, you know, there were trends in the 80s and 90s where we were so strict about, you know, manufacturing zoning that we make it almost difficult for light manufacturing, like breweries or whatever, to be in parts where we would like them to be. It's not the same as a factory with steam and you're building cars. It's just not, you know. So I think that's something to consider. Because the economic incentives, traditionally, they have favored large companies and many times have not panned out to work very well. And this is just something we know from the past 20 or 30 years of different economic incentives. So those are some things that I was thinking of as we were having this discussion, and I just wanted to make a comment that I'd like to see those, some of those considerations be included in some way in our strategic plan and updates moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Porter. Anyone else? Commissioner Richardson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question is where are we in terms of our positioning for manufacturing and distribution? I came through Jackson County just recently, and every time I go through there, I remark at the Family Dollar Distribution Center. That thing is huge, and that's in Jackson County, little Jackson County. I think they've just recently, or one of the counties or cities over in that area, maybe Jackson County, has just attracted a Amazon distribution center. And I look at the FedEx distribution center down in Marion County, Ocala, just off of I-75. And certainly we ought to be able to compete with, you know, cities and counties like that. And it doesn't involve high tech, it doesn't involve magnetics, it doesn't involve people with advanced degrees, but high wage jobs for our blue collar workers in the community. And I think that's where we have got to make a concerted effort as well, so that we can get away from our reliance on state government jobs that in some instances don't even hardly pay a livable wage. You know, our state employees, the jobs are being eliminated almost every year, it seems, and our state employees in the past 12 years have had 2 across-the-board pay increases. And so we've got to turn to those jobs that pay high-wage salaries, but don't require the kind of advanced degrees and high-tech skills it seems that we've emphasized here this afternoon. So, Christina, can you all speak to that and what we're doing in that regard?
Yes, Commissioner. Our manufacturing and logistics sector is absolutely a targeted industry of ours. And to your point, and able to provide resources for our manufacturers to grow, whether it's nurturing their career ladder, utilizing apprenticeships. We formed that Big Bend Manufacturing Association, working closely with Florida Banks. That's already starting to reap benefits as we're able to go in and help a local manufacturer and local manufacturers with their optimization of their businesses. Most recently, we are working with one who said that his team couldn't spell lean before they started, and they were able to retool some of their businesses utilizing CARES Act funding that they received. So we're absolutely focused in this sector. I agree 100% that it provides a good paying job and opportunities to climb up those ladders. And I'm sure you'll see that highlighted throughout their strategic plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then lastly, Madam Chair, I noticed President Murdoch come in the room. I know there he is there. They, in addition to Lively, have a very robust career and technical education program in a number of different areas. I had an opportunity, of course, to work at Lively for about 1.5 years before I retired. And there are so many opportunities, Mr. President, I'm sure you can speak to it, in those programs. Just to give you an example, there's a welding program now at TCC, has been at Lively for a while, where a student can come out of that program with 1 year of training and earn better than $100,000 a year. But there are very few opportunities like that here in Tallahassee. Somebody with that kind of training would have to go to the shipyards in Jacksonville or Augusta, Georgia, in order to earn that kind of money. So if we could partner with the TCCs and Livelies of the world to see if we can bring those kinds of jobs to Tallahassee as well, we certainly have the training resource for that. So I just put that out there as something for us to think about and consider as well. You know, because we talk about retaining talent, but typically when we talk about that, it's the college and university graduates that we're talking about. But we've got a lot of talent that we're developing in those career and technical programs, and they're having to leave Tallahassee in this area to find employment. So just something else for us to consider as we move forward with respect to economic development and creating jobs and business opportunities.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Richardson. Commissioner Dozier. Oh, he passed.
He passed, okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't want to skip over Commissioner Maddox there. Great discussions so far, fantastic progress. Christine, I've appreciated all of our conversations this week. And Gray, I am excited for you to move forward with a new strategic plan. I echo your thoughts, and Christine, what you've said. I was really glad, actually, I should say this, that you mentioned all of the staff. So often we hear from the directors, so thank you for mentioning all of your staff, because every one of them has a really important role in OEV. We don't always get to hear directly from them, but particularly in the last year, to keep up the pace with all of the things that were already on your list, and then add the COVID response. I know this has been an incredibly difficult workload for you all, and you've executed it phenomenally, so thank you for that. So I think a lot of the things that have been said were similar issues that I had on my mind today. And one of the things, I think, Commissioner Porter, you mentioned this, maybe some others, but zoning and building permits and other things like that for new types of facilities. The Domi factory, or, factory and what they went through, laboratories, other things like that. I think both city and county growth management departments have done a great job in recent years, really upping their game and getting more efficient. But we still have a category of new types of facilities that may be looking for variances or things like that. There's also some urban design standards that may come into play for a North American Properties type project. And going back to what you said in your presentation, Gray, looking at the time, that's one of the biggest risk factors and what companies might be assessing when they come to town. I'm wondering if this is an area that we could look at in the strategic plan. It may be drawn out in the conversation already, but how we could modify some of those zoning or building permit processes to reflect some of these new technologies and business opportunities that are going to come to town in the appropriate location. Would you think that that is an area that may be beneficial for us to look at? Madam Chair?
If I making sure I follow protocol here, Chair, Madam Chair. So yes, and I think the way you have to think about it, so that's a really good conversation. So when you look at a strategic plan for the Office of Economic Vitality, you have to look at what is core strategy. And there's the core strategy, the things that they're going to do, the basic day-to-day, this is what we do. But in order for that to be successful, they also have to have what we call, and Commissioner Porter, you were kind of alluding to this enabling strategies. So if we do things in other parts of our government that enable us to have, affordable housing and things that kind of link to it, it also comes together to help enable your core strategies. So Commissioner Dozier, that's how I look at those things. That is an enabling strategy that helps us to reach our overall objectives. And then the players, as far as how we collaborate together to get there, that's how that system feeds up. So I think, yes, it is a piece that you can look at. And at the end of the day, that kind of goes into this overall piece of how it enables us to do the things we want to do from the overall objectives.
I think that's a great distinction. It's not something that OEV would necessarily bring under their umbrella to execute, but it may be something that is drawn out through your interviews and discussions. I mean, it's already come up here for a few of us. And if that is the case, and I love the phrase enabling strategies, we should be able to then point back to our respective commissions or take some steps to address those to help support OEV's activities.
Yeah.
So were you going to say something else, or I was going to move on to another?
No, I think, and just to add on to it real quick, I think it's so, as you look at it from a holistic way, and you look at not just inside of government, but you also have other players in the community. So you have to think about what do we directly implement, and then what can we help advocate and facilitate others to be part of that. And then so it's that, going back to Melissa's, is having that North Star, and that was in that strategic plan, is how you develop that North Star of where we want to go, and then it's looking how things align both at core and enabling to get there. So there's people that have the direct ownership of implementing. There are those that we're going to advocate for, and there's some things that we may even facilitate to happen.
Well,
I'm getting in the weeds there, but that's how, in my mind, when I look at it from a standpoint of strategy.
There's a lot of weeds here. That's what the workshop's for. So thank you for adding that. I wonder, and I will leave this comment to you all to figure out as you approach the strategic plan, but if those strategies that we need to implement in other areas come out of the interviews, it might be nice to have a little section that just informs the board of what those strategies might be, so we can look to other areas in city and county business. One other question I had, and Madam Chair, I am aware of the time. I'm not sure if anyone else is in queue, but I've got just a couple more questions here. The philosophy of change, you talked about that in your presentation, and I noted, I think this was in the EVLC minutes, you had talked about the importance of regionalism going forward. I think that deals with onshoring, manufacturing, the supply chain, and the new opportunities we may have. So could you just fill that out for this board a little bit of why you think the new strategic plan might point to a more of a regional focus than perhaps we saw the last time around?
I'll be glad to. So I think if you look at Leon County, City of Tallahassee, and we look at what we refer to in our vernacular as product. What is our product for a logistics or distribution center? And so there's some locations that we probably can compete, and there's some, quite frankly, that we can't compete in this county. And, Ben and Christina know that. Fortunately, in our work, we do work for some of those type companies, and we've been out. We haven't done anything in the Southeast. We've been out in the Midwest with those projects. They're really changing in how capital investment is significant and how they look at locations, and the sites are quite large. And so regionalism and working regionally fits because we have some regional sites that would absolutely be considered a Tallahassee site that do not sit inside of Leon County. And it benefits our people. And so if you look at a lot of these, and Commissioner Richardson, I really appreciate you bringing this up, because when you look at this holistic strategy, a lot of these companies, like you said, that there's a technical degree or certification that helps, but they also pay for college reimbursement. If it gives a gateway for somebody for a job, some of these companies will pay 90% of their tuition to go back to college. And so there are great benefits that help the community as a whole. And so, again, I think that is when you look at regionally where we can, if we don't have the site in this county, and the site may be in a county next to us, and there's 2,000 jobs in a large distribution facility, we benefit from it, from disposable income that's coming back. The people that are going to work there are going to come from this county. And if they're, it helps increase skills and education, we benefit as well. So, that's how you have to look at it.
Thank you for that. And Commissioner Richardson, I meant to mention, your comments about Jackson County, others, and you focused on regionalism a lot with Gadsden, so appreciate that. And these numbers are quite old, but it does stand out that I think 25% of our sales tax contributing to Blueprint comes from our surrounding counties that are coming here to spend money, and that is significant for us. So my last question, and Gray, this gets into what you said about there's no cookie cutter model, and I know we talked about this years ago for the way an economic development organization operates, but I think we do have this kind of tension where, as many people have said, there's a demand from the community to address inequities, to address access to capital, which we've made great strides recently, but from my perspective, perhaps we could do a little better job articulating and sharing information with our community, with the board, on why a recruitment effort, spending money on ROI or strategic site selection, actually gets us to some of those goals. They're not directly related, but if we recruit manufacturers in a cluster, that's where the jobs are. And they could be on the south side, they could be other places. So in thinking about that, my question is, without having a cookie cutter, could you talk to us about what you see in the trends for public economic development organizations, how specifically we engage with public and partners to make sure that we have that transparency and that community conversation, and we all understand the benefit or lack thereof of different programs and can have that dialogue?
Well, Commissioner Dozier, I think you're exactly right. I can show you a model that works perfectly in one location, and in the next location, the very same model is a disaster. And so it's up to this group that's sitting here to figure out what works for us. But what does that organization look like? What are the key elements of that? So I think there are a couple things that have to be a part of that in some way, whether it's 100% public or it's a public-private or it's 100% private in how you do economic. It's up to the community. But in the model that we have, and if we're looking forward, how do we make and maximize the best use of this model? I go back to kind of how we look at strategy. You've got to have the voice of the customer. And so people that are trying to create jobs, the people that are creating jobs, who's putting an investment in the community, those are the critical voices that have to come back to this group in your decision-making in order to make good policy decisions. And so in how you structure that, how you have it today, you heard from Steve Evans earlier, that's leading a committee that works, that gets that input, that comes back into the process. That works well. You know, you've got other, groups in this city that bring voices back to this group that you hear in public comment. That's good. So I think you just continue to build off of it and figure out what works works best. But I will say, if you look at and this was, oh goodness, I'm not going to say the year, but I would show my age if I could remember the cover of Fortune magazine. But it talked about what all successful cities had in common. And I'll show my age. The cover of it was Fred Smith holding a model airplane when FedEx was launching. So you can, if you want to go look, and I'm old. But that article spoke to me, and it still speaks to me today. Because it's true, what those cities have in common is the ability to engage business voice into the equation in a selfless manner. Not selfish, but selfless manager that are part of the equation, that we can bring the voice of business to the table and we collaborate together to make decisions. And so I think that is the beauty of any structure, whether it's 100% public or a P3 or all private, is to having that ability to have that conversation so that the end user and that voice is coming back so that you can make good policy decisions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I don't have another question, but in hearing about focus on local business, I think this is one of the areas that we really could expand on. We talked about target copy, Christine, you and I yesterday, others. We could hear directly from those businesses and how they've worked with OEV, and that might help us fill that piece out. Thank you. Thank you, Greg.
Okay, thank you all for your conversation and discussion. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion on the table?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We wanted to have a 15-minute mass break, but that didn't happen. Our meeting is scheduled to start at 3 o'clock. I'm going to ask the audience indulgence, because I know that we have people here to speak. If you could just give us to 3:05 so that we can take a necessary break, and we'll start our meeting back up at 3:05. Thank you very much for your patience.